So I think the pandemic was a watershed moment for the diagnostic industry. It actually led to some very good innovations in the market. So I'll just like to touch upon a few. Molecular diagnostics was actually a non-existent entity in many parts of the country earlier. But post COVID-19, what happened was there were over 1,000 molecular labs set up in a matter of few months all over India. That's number one. Now, as for the routine tests which we have, there was a period of 2 years where the routine tests were, of course, very low. But now we have returned to complete normalcy, and the number of routine tests has returned to, in fact, higher than pre-COVID levels. Why? Because people have become more aware of their health, and I think the number of preventive health checkups is going up, and that is why the number of routine tests is also going up. So I think as long as the patient is getting reports of a very high quality, I think discounting is one of the ways that they need to attract patients. But at the end of the day, what is very, very important is how we maintain quality. So like we've heard today, quality comes at a great cost. And if we don't have that quality, then just giving discounts is not the answer. But on the other hand, if you're able to maintain quality at a very, very high level as what is required today, because it's the healthcare industry, then giving discounts is something which is going to work for a period of time. But what we have to understand is that for routine checkups, discounting is one thing. But for specialized tests, for example, if you're talking about autoimmune disease workups, then discounting is not the key. What people need and what clinicians need is accurate reports and somebody from the diagnostic labs to actually explain the meaning of those reports to them. So it's more of a high-end work and a lot of consultation service along with it. So for routine tests, some degree of discounting can work. But for specialized tests, I don't think discounting is the way to go. It's about having a wide menu of tests, having the best quality kits, and having a very good trained person and a doctor to interpret those results for clinicians. So competition is, of course, in the last 2 years, because of COVID, I think a lot of people have entered at the time. But what has happened is that now COVID has gone. So some of that interest which had actually started off with a big bang has now waned. So some of these players will, of course, they have very deep pockets and they will make a dent in the diagnostic industry. But I think India is a very large country, and I think there is enough space for as many entrants as possible, provided, like I said, they stick to high levels of quality. So just price discounting will not work in the long run. I think it has to be a good mix of very high quality, good clinical and technical expertise, which will drive the way forward, because there are over 4,000 diagnostic tests. So for every lab to be specialized in every single one of these tests and gain the trust of the clinician for each and every one of these tests will take time. So pathology is an industry which you can enter easily, but to scale in this industry is very, very difficult. So when we say integrated diagnostics, it basically means that you're using multiple modalities of diagnosis. It's nothing but that. So if a patient, let's say, is admitted to the hospital, and he's come with, say, neck rigidity, right? So in this case, what will you have to do? You will have to probably do something like an MRI or a CT scan of the person along with some test which is a biofire, which is where you take the CSF and you do a biofire test. So this is what we really mean by integrated diagnostics. It's also called syndromic testing, in which you can test for multiple diseases at the same time, and it works best for infectious diseases. So it is already being done in multiple hospitals across the country, and that is actually a standard way of operating. We are giving it a different name. But when we talk about high-end IT and data analysis, that is something which will add a layer on top of integrated diagnostics. So what it will basically do is it will take inputs from various tests, it will analyze those results, and it will actually generate the further line of action. But that we are still some way away from that step, but eventually that will come into the picture. No. So about tie-up, not really. But what is actually required again is that most of these centers are a combination of pathology and radiology. So they need to have very experienced radiologists who are actually interpreting the reports. Because what we have seen is that they are unable to, say, explain the difference between an ultrasound and a CT scan for diagnosing kidney stones. That's just an example. So they end up missing things like kidney stones. Patient would go to a higher end center, undergo a CT scan maybe 3 weeks later, and then later they would find that there would be a kidney stone. There is no mistake made by the radiologist, but that knowledge sharing to the patient that this kind of modality may not be the best modality, that's one thing which they have to maintain. Yes. So I think a minimal level of accreditation or ISO certification should be there across the board. NABL has had a good step of introducing the entry-level accreditation, which makes it much easier. So this will sort of encourage a lot of people to take this up in a much larger manner. The only thing is that they need to have the capacity to deal with this large number of labs in the country. So unless they automate a large amount of this process digitally, it will be difficult for them to find that kind of manpower to audit every single lab. And the second thing is that they've already started doing is those surprise audits. So they do go to these smaller labs who have applied for MELT and actually check them also. So it's important.